So, hello everyone. Welcome to Aura's virtual town halls. We do this every Wednesday, and we invite some really good thought leaders, people from all walks of lives, former elected officials running for office. And this week, I'm super excited to be in the company of the executive director of Resilience Force, which is a campaign that is promoting immigrants as essential workers. Especially this week, this is such an important conversation after we've seen the fires and in the extreme heat in California, for example. But this is not the only place where immigrants struggle to have their rights or to just even be heard. So I invited Saket to share with us a little bit of the campaign, a little bit about his life, and of course the organization. So thank you so much and welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you, Aura, for having me on. So pleased to be with you. And it is a tough time in California. Are you okay?
Yeah, we have been tasting a lot of campfire. It feels like it's constantly that way. Um, um, Fortunately, at least in Los Angeles, it's not as bad as other places like in San Francisco or Northern California, where the fires have been really, 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 really devastating for a lot of communities.
Yeah.
But this is in the whole state. It's been really sad to see climate change at its best.
Yeah.
Income inequality at its best or at its worst, per se. The lack of leadership and a lot more. So I'm very excited to meet you and to have you speak to the viewers and everyone else. So tell us a little bit about who you are.
So I lead an organization called Resilience Force. We are right now in the midst of historic fires in the West. In the meantime, historic flooding and rainfalls, hurricanes and rains in the Southeast. We just had a few months ago rainfalls leading to dam breaks in Michigan. So we are really in the midst of a climate crisis, a deep climate crisis. And right in the center of that, the people we depend on to build our way out of this crisis, to get out of this crisis, is a group of essential workers called resilience workers. Resilience workers are the people who rebuild, who repair, who bring people back home, who bring cities back after climate disasters. And I lead the national organization for those workers. We founded Resilience Force after hurricanes that hit year after year in the Southeast. And right now, our members and we are on the ground in the wildfires, in the flooding that is happening in the Southeast. We're on the ground in the aftermath of the inland hurricane that ripped through Iowa, cleaning up Michigan after the dams broke. So we're the voice for these workers, and we're calling for a more resilient way to build the future. A vast proportion of these workers are immigrants, and so we're also an immigrant rights organization.
Yeah, of course. And one of the things that I really had to reflect on with this pandemic is that a lot of immigrants couldn't stay home because their jobs are not stay-home types of jobs.
That's right.
A lot of immigrants were more exposed to COVID-19 because they had to go to work and they couldn't. A lot of them are also undocumented immigrants, sadly, that couldn't rely on any support from the stimulus package or the aid or such. So especially in California, where over 25% of our food in the country comes from we really see immigrants exposing their lives and their health to put food on our table.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There were images that were just extraordinary, as the skies turned from blue all the way to purple and then maroon in some areas. And under that sky, farm workers continuing to pick tomatoes and cucumbers and other crop, and as the natural light darkened, that these farm workers were doing it by the light of their cell phones, continuing to work so that we had food on our table. You're absolutely right, Aura. Almost 70% of immigrants, almost 70% of immigrants are in the professions that we call essential. These are our essential workers. A vast proportion of meat packers, of restaurant workers in kitchens, of farm workers, of course, of domestic workers. These are the essential workers. They're the ones going out working so the rest of us can stay home.
Absolutely.
And if they are essential, then we need to treat them as essential.
Absolutely. And that's such an important distinction that you're making, and an important point, especially now seeing the attacks on immigrants from our federal government. I want this to be an issue that is bipartisan. I want both parties to come together and protect immigrants and essential workers, and immigrants that are essential workers, because it feels that it's the right human thing to do. But unfortunately, it's really hard to get the Republicans to come around with a rhetoric of racism and anti-immigrant, sentiment. What are some of the things that you guys are doing to evangelize, to change hearts and minds from these folks that we need them in order to protect our immigrant essential workers? We also need Republicans to support us. So what are some of the things that you guys are doing to make sure that this also touches other places and not just the Democratic Party?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Aura, that we need everyone. And I really believe, I've been to many disaster zones. Our roots, the roots of our organization are in the years after Hurricane Katrina. It was the first time most of the people in the United States witnessed a major climate disaster. Hurricane Katrina made landfall in Louisiana and Mississippi. And since then, there have been many, many climate disasters, And I'm a big believer that at the moment that you're losing your home, in the midst of a disaster, as that fire is coming, as that hurricane is coming, in that moment, there are no Democrats and no Republicans. There are just people, and they are looking at their fragility. And they are in awe of nature's anger, a world out of balance. And then their homes are flooded or in flames. Their neighborhoods are lost. They need to come home. And you know who they're depending on for that? Immigrant workers.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a story. 2 years ago, Hurricane Michael ripped through Florida. And the place that it went and created a catastrophe was not Miami. It was the Panhandle, where 7 out of 10 voters voted for Trump. 7 out of 10 voters or more in many counties are conservative. And right in that area, Hurricane Michael ripped through, and there were cities that lost 80% of their housing stock.
Wow.
Can you imagine 80% of the people of a city become climate refugees need someone to build their home. But in this case, most of them were white. Most of them were conservative. Most of them were Trump voters. And most of them voted for Governor DeSantis in Florida on his immigration platform.
Right.
In other words, on the Trump anti-immigrant platform. But the people who came in to fix those homes were undocumented people from Honduras, from Guatemala. They were coming from New Orleans. They had built cities, hurricane after hurricane. And we started to build bonds. We started to facilitate the building of bonds between the immigrants and the homeowners. And it worked. The homeowners admitted they needed the immigrants and admitted that if they were building the community, then they should be able to stay. So it is possible to build bonds. I think there's a special opening for that after disasters. People on the ground are just rolling up the sleeves and looking to solve problems together. And that's the opportunity we need to take.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of that. I'm an organizer at heart. I talk a lot about organizing through my broadcast and just in general. And one of the organizing principles that we always talk about is that people act out of their own self-interest. So when your self-interest changes, and when certainly you just need other people, then you kind of have to have a change of hearts and minds. Fortunately, and that's per se the opportunity. So I see some folks in the comments, and I invite you. I invite everyone to give your questions, your comments. There's if you are on Instagram, there is a question box in the bottom right next to the comments, so we don't lose your question. But some folks were asking about coalitions, building coalitions. What kind of coalitions can we build in places where we know that immigrants are essential and we want to support that, but maybe it's challenging to kind of get that across?
Well, it's critical that we build bonds right now between immigrants and non.
I can hear you on Instagram, and I think I just kind of lost you on Facebook, but I'm hoping you return. Let's see. I think on Instagram you're good. I'm waiting for you to be back on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. I know that while you figure that out, I know that some folks are. Let us know if the sound is good. You can put a little heart in the comments if you're hearing an echo. Just let us handle it. It just kind of comes and goes because we're using two different mediums to communicate with folks. So, okay, let's see. I still don't see you on Facebook, but I'm assuming you will come back soon. And people on Facebook are saying that they hear us perfect. So that's amazing. And I see the hearts. Yay. But I lost your image on Facebook for some reason. Okay, perfect. So in the meantime, we are talking to Saket Soni, who's the executive director of the Resilience Force. They have a very exciting campaign, Immigrants Are Essential, and we're talking about essential workers that are immigrants in this case, and essential workers in general, and throughout the pandemic, and now the fires in California, and a lot of them are climate refugees. So we're talking about coalitions, and I just have you back, so we are all good.
Good.
So we're talking about coalitions, and how can we? Some folks were asking. I see solidarity and coalitions. Are we able to form this type of coalitions right now with how polarizing our political environment is?
Well, we shouldn't get distracted by Washington, and we shouldn't let Washington, D.C. tell us what kinds of coalitions we can build. Right in California, there's a coalition to be built between the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. who are helping to put out the fires, and the firefighters and their union, that needs those workers. And if those workers are putting out those fires, then they deserve to be free.
Yeah.
If we can depend on those workers, if we can trust them while they're putting out their fires, then we should be able to trust them when there are no fires. And they shouldn't return to prison. They should be free. If we need them as workers, we should be able to have them in our society as fully dignified human beings. There's a coalition to be built between them, those firefighters, the homeowners who need the homes to be built, and mayors, Republican or Democrat, who know that the fires will come again and again. In Florida, in Louisiana, we just had Hurricane Laura 2 weeks ago make landfall. Right now, even as we're talking, rains are hammering Mobile, Alabama, and Pensacola. These are the spaces where immigrant workers and other essential workers will come in from the margins of society. Immigrants, the formerly incarcerated, rural workers. These are the people who are going to come in and save these cities. Well, that's the moment where there's a coalition to be built between them and the homeowners, the mayors, the insurance companies, the small businesses. These are powerful forces. It may be the case that, Washington is not the place to start, but right at the bottom, in the towns, the cities that are flooding and burning, that's a place where we can build coalition.
Yeah. And you made such a important point with the incarcerated immigrants that are, battling the fires in California. Because we often forget that people that are in prison and jail also are sent to work, and with $1 pay or no pay at all. And that's an important, it's important for my audience to listen to that, because I don't think we talk about it enough, and I don't think the news cover it enough. The other point that I want to make with that is that a lot of immigrants are of color, but they're also Black. And there's a lot of Afro-Latinos and just Haitians, people from West Africa, from all sorts of walks of corners of the world that come to this country, just like a lot of us came looking for a better life, a better future for our families, for ourselves. And often we forget that when we talk about defunding the police, we are also talking about those Black lives that are also immigrants, that we might not be from here or Louisiana or from South LA, but they're also targeted by the police because of their skin color. So what are some of the things that you guys are doing that with the intersectionality of race and obviously like immigration and immigrants and essential workers?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, a lot of our members of Resilience Force, for example, are Honduran, but when they stand in front of Home Depot to pick up a job, when they go and work, rebuild a home, get on a roof, when someone looks at them, they don't look Honduran. These are Garifunas. They are Black immigrants, and they are also treated by the police as Black people in public spaces. They are more likely to be picked up by the police, more likely to be attacked. We've seen in Florida, recently, a whole slew of sting operations where police dress up as contractors, to check the papers of workers. And, guess whose papers they check first? It's the Black immigrants. They're the ones disproportionately picked up. I mean, not to mention, Aura, that we're talking here about, the intersection of race and immigration, but also of climate. And, Black immigrants are the ones disproportionately displaced by climate change. People who are here from the Caribbean, from Haiti, they're here because of natural disasters and climate-driven disasters. And so you're absolutely right. We need to make these links. One of the things that we need is in the immigrant rights movement, a real clarity that immigration is a Black issue and race is an immigration issue. And in a lot of immigrant communities, there is a deep history of anti-Blackness, and in our own communities, we need to contend with that and fight that.
Absolutely. And, I recently ran for city council here in Los Angeles in this election cycle. And my district is probably one of the most diverse districts of LA. It has a very thriving, exciting African-American community and also Latino. But now Mexican-American is mostly Belizean, Honduran, they're Colombians. It's like a little bit more of a melting pot. And it was so interesting for me to experience firsthand that tension. I'm an Afro-Latina from Colombia. So I can kind of understand both. I'm much identified as both. And it was quite tense, that I kind of came to, to as a grassroots candidate to run. And we have so much more in common that we have in the differences. And actually, I always mention that our diversity is our greatest strength. That this is how the issues that affect all of us. That all of these social justice issues affects all of us in one way or another. And here in California, having such a rooted movement with the farmers, farm workers, and all of the work with Cesar Chavez that they were able to do, it's quite interesting to see sometimes the lack of solidarity. Yeah. And I really hope that we can bridge that. And I'm not sure if you guys at Resilience Force have been able to figure out a way to kind of bring us together and work together. Have you guys experimented with a few things that are proven that are working?
Well, on a personal note, Aura, I'm from India, and in India, having grown up in India, and I came to the United States when I was 18 or 19. Growing up in India, I got to understand the caste system. That is a system of labor in India, where there are people on top, people in the middle, people in the bottom. It is a very deep system of separating people according to their worth and value, based on primarily the labor that they do, the jobs they do, but
their skill.
They where they fit into society, is deeply connected to the work they do in the caste system. The United States also has a kind of caste system.
Yeah.
If you are Black and from the South, you are in a different place in the American caste system than if you are Asian American, for example. If you are a Black immigrant, you are in a different place than if you're a non-Black immigrant. And I think this is where, we really need to open our eyes and understand that this is all playing out in the United States. So when we build coalition, like you did in LA, like we're doing with the Resilience Force, we can organize immigrants, but inside of that immigrant community, the differences matter. A lot of the non-Black immigrants that we interact with will say, well, race isn't a problem in our countries. Well, that's not really true. You can say that because you're a non-Black person in your country.
Right.
So I think we try to do a lot of education. We try to connect specifically, to other parts of the immigrant rights movement and the broader social justice movement, to make sure that we're really intersectional, in our approach. Those are some of the things we do.
And so tell us a little bit about how is Immigrants Are Essential, hashtag Immigrants Are Essential. And if you guys are out there, I encourage you to please tweet and post, and also follow Resilience Force and follow the work of Saket Soni and follow him. They definitely have been keeping me very informed about this issue. So what are some of the things, the tactics, what was making this campaign so hot right now?
Well, the Immigrants Are Essential hashtag and the Immigrants Are Essential campaign came about because in the pandemic, in the midst of COVID-19 and in the midst of climate change, immigrants are doing essential work. These are essential workers. They are, in the pandemic, they are not only working in the hospitals as nurses and doctors, but they are the janitors. Yeah. They are working in the restaurants. In the climate change era too, immigrants are essential. They're the ones rebuilding homes, rebuilding cities. So, what we've seen across America is in the big cities, every night during the pandemic, people have come out on balconies and clapped for essential workers. They've applauded essential workers. One of the things that's happened during the pandemic is most Americans who never before thought about workers, suddenly connected to their dependence on workers. We realized how interdependent we are, and we started applauding essential workers. But a lot of people who were applauding didn't really think that, that also is immigrants. Immigrants need everything that essential workers need. They need PPE, they need masks, they need protections, but they need one other thing. They need full citizenship.
Yes.
In the United States. And so Immigrants Are Essential was a campaign that we and the National Immigration Law Center combined forces to run. We're pushing for a greater awareness in our culture of the essential role immigrants are playing. And one of the things we're doing is working with artists, including immigrant artists across the country.
Yeah.
To produce these gorgeous images in honor of essential workers, in honor of these heroes. These are often immigrant artists. They're highlighting immigrants who are doing essential work. And we're getting, content creators and influencers to kind of push out this material. So if you're at home watching, follow the hashtag, follow the campaign, follow the content, share it. We want to produce, the recognition that immigrants aren't receiving in Congress, in Washington. In Washington, they're left out. In Washington, they are not recognized. We're trying to create that recognition in our culture. And we think that if we create it in our culture, then politics has to follow.
Absolutely. And I also want to call out all of my artist friends that are watching. And if you're not an artist, but you have a friend that is an artist, we're going through some of the most incredible scenery right now with the fires and the air pollution. Please, we need art. We need grassroots art. We need guerrilla art, and if you are really touched by this topic, make some art and use the hashtag and reach out to the Resilience Force Works and be part of a movement that is honoring immigrants that are essential workers, that maybe our government is not acknowledging them legally in the way that they should. but we as human, as their neighbors, as the people that eat their food, as the people that employ them, as the people that see them sitting in the bus next to us, we can do our part and honor them. We don't need to wait for anybody to honor them. We can do it ourselves. So I'm definitely pledging, and I'm very committed to continue supporting you guys' work. I mean, I can continue this conversation, of course, without talking about what the air pollution in California and the West in general, and also in Oregon, even in Washington right now. And I have some friends in Vancouver that they also feeling the poor air quality. And I mean, we're in the thick of it, I'm a big nature person, and I was one of the people that was like evacuated, like you have to leave right now because of the fires. So our brothers and sisters that are growing our food, we've seen some very, very impactful images. Some of us have seen, not just through your medium, through the Resilience Force handle, or the Immigrants Are Essential hashtag, but just in general. I mean, they are out there picking strawberries, growing our food. Still, what are some of the things that we can do to support them now? Because I don't think we're going to turn around and have a comprehensive immigration reform anytime soon. But what can we do right now to support them? What are some of the ways that we can support essential workers that are like in the fields right now?
Well, both during the pandemic and now in the midst of the wildfires, there just really needs to be an outcry. You had Trump come out there, and it was a case of insult on top of injury. When they asked him a question about climate change, and he tried to blame it on forest management.
Yes.
As if there's a bunch of dry twigs, and they should have been removed, but they weren't. We have to demand that fossil fuel companies, get reined in. We have to demand action on climate change. We have to make it just like legalization, just like recognition for immigrants. We have to make that our number one priority.
Absolutely. I want to see all the hearts, please, for this comment. I'm not the only one claiming this. We definitely need to address climate change like now.
And I think on essential workers, on the farm workers, on the domestic workers, on everyone else, there's a lot we can do. Firstly, we need to call for an immediate recognition of these workers. A lot of these workers are working because they are desperate. It is better to bend over and pick those fruits because you'll get those meager wages. You can't afford to leave your fields. You can't afford to go home. You can't afford to evacuate because you don't know when you'll work again. These are workers who need legal status and need a fair wage, and that's what we should all be pushing for. This is a chance to build coalition and build a movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And the beauty of it is that we can start at the local level, working with our local elected officials, and having them. I mean, in LA, at least we have a fund that helps immigrants. I think now with the cuts with COVID-19 is being cut. So that's another point. We also had a climate emergency department that doesn't exist anymore because of COVID-19. And this is not the time to turn back because lives are at stake. And I mean, in terms of climate change, it really is, it's affecting all of us. But these are lives that are like we keep saying here, that are essential and that are doing the work that sometimes nobody wants to do, and are an intimate part of our lives too. A lot of essential workers are taking care of our children, live in our homes, or are in charge of making sure that our homes are safe. So it's only fair that we are that we also advocate for them. So I hope that all of you guys can join us on doing that. What are some of the positive things that are happening right now? I know that there's a lot of stuff. There's fires. There is, hurricanes. Soon enough, we're going to start seeing all the news about the seawater rise and how towns in North Carolina, South Carolina, and all the East Coast are basically drowning. But there are some beautiful moments here. What are some of those wins that we're seeing right now?
Well, I think, the kind of energy we're seeing now among younger voters and voters of color as we're gearing up for the election, that's really important. In our Immigrants Are Essential campaign, the outpouring of artists who have wanted to join the movement for essential workers, that's really, that's really positive. I just think we're in a moment right now, in the West Coast, in the middle of the country, in rural America, among young people and people of color. We're in a moment like never before where, the world is at stake, the future of the country and much more is at stake. And I think people are feeling it. And I think people are starting to come out and raising their voices. With essential workers, I was on a call last night with workers who arrived in this town in Louisiana called Lake Charles, that, got hit terribly by Hurricane Laura. And there in the middle of of Lake Charles, just as the floodwater is receding, there are these workers and they're picking up their tools and they're rebuilding, because they want a better future for themselves. They want to build bonds with residents, with elected officials. These are people who haven't lost their fight and lost their courage. And these are also people who want to contribute. So I find a lot of hope in that, Look, the big thing we need to do is the next 2 months, we're walking into the most important election of our lives, right? And if, you have to vote. If you know someone who's on the fence, you have to get them to vote. It is absolutely critical that we all go to the polls. Our lives hang in the balance.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And someone was asking here on Instagram, how do we add pressure to local government to move this issue? So what are some of the tactics, I guess, that they want to know?
What was that question again?
How do we add pressure to local government to move this issue?
Yeah. Local. So I think that, the smallest group of people, 2, 3, 4 people, going to a local government election, elected official, and confronting them face to face, with masks on, in a socially distanced way. But you can't underestimate the power of showing up at someone's doorstep and saying, "Listen, this is what I think." If you can't do that, call. You'd be surprised. Local officials often don't hear from their constituents. A lot of people think about Congress and the president, and there's so much focus on what the White House is doing wrong, what Trump is doing wrong. That's all true, but there is so much in the hands of local officials. And your governor. Governors have an enormous power, particularly during emergencies, particularly during disasters. And we have to push. Even the governors that say the right thing, we have to make sure their teams do the right thing. We have to hold their feet to the fire.
And one thing that I want to bring up with this comment about local governments and just voting in general is the money in politics. guys, we got to get way more savvy about the people that we vote for. And we
Absolutely.
got to just vote all the time, not just presidential elections. We need to vote when there is local elections as well. In California, we changed the laws so all of the elections fall at the same time. So people don't get confused and don't go to this one and
Mhm.
don't go to that one. There's a lot of talk around voting by mail. We have to do it. It couldn't be easier right now. In my district, about 11% of the people vote. We are 250,000 constituents here.
Mhm.
I mean, imagine if more of us will vote. Imagine the type of things that we could do
Absolutely.
if we could vote. So I encourage everyone to get involved and to, like you suggested, go to their local elected officials, their city council member, their mayor, their governor, and ask them um, to support a campaign for immigrants that are essential.
Yeah, we need a movement among elected officials to be the line of defense between ICE and Trump's immigration policies, Trump's immigration attacks. Um, Elected officials can be the line, can hold the line between those attacks and the immigrants who live in the cities, in the municipality, in the county. So we need that. We need a strong line of defense, and we can all push and encourage, and also provide elected officials with a mandate, with the cover that they need, so that they can point to us and say, I'm sorry, but my constituents are pushing me to do this. In places in places like Florida and Louisiana, even Democrats haven't had the courage to stand up for immigrants. And I think that's true across the country. We have to make people really clear that, um, you know, when floods and fires are raging and there's a global pandemic, it's not that we want immigration to matter more. Actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's an immigrant and who's not. We're all in this together, and
Yeah.
we need to solve these problems together. That's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're almost on top of the hour. We actually went a little over, but how do we get in touch with you, or how can we helpful? How can we be helpful to your campaign, and how can we make sure that we continue supporting the work of immigrants and continue pushing for this idea of having dignity and respect for immigrants that are also essential workers?
Well, we'd love your help and support, and we need it. In the next few months, we need to keep immigrants who are essential workers front and center in the culture, in the news. We need to maintain their visibility. So, if you're an artist, reach out to us. We'd love to work with you. We need artists right now to help us express ourselves in our best way. You can follow Resilience Force at resilienceforce.org, or on Instagram or Twitter. You can follow the hashtag Immigrants Are Essential. Join up, and we'll just let you know as there are big campaign actions. Wherever you are, and if you're a content creator, if you have a following, then use the hashtag. Get people to gather around it. We want this to be the flag that we carry all the way into next year, as we demand a legal status for immigrants who are essential workers.
Saket, thank you so much. Let us know when you have a trending moment so we can be part of your trending moment too.
We
When
will.
Immigrants Are Essential hashtag has a trending moment, let us know so we can support it and we can make it heard all around the globe, so that people can know that in this country there are people that really deeply care about immigrants, and that we know that they're essential workers, and we know that they also deserve the rights that they have earned with the hard work that they do every day.
I will. And thank you for having me on. And thank you to all your followers. And it's been really great. And for you, Aura, and all of you in California, I just wish you safety and health, and another day on the other end of this where we're going to win the fight for justice, for immigrants, for the climate, and for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And we will have you back very soon. And maybe, who knows, when this whole thing is not, it's said and done, maybe we can meet in person and have a very nice, art showing somewhere in LA.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. And congratulate the artists who've done all this great work.
Absolutely. All right. We talk very soon. So that was Saket Soni with his campaign for Immigrants Are Essential. So I need you all to go and follow them and continue supporting their work and use the hashtag. I have been definitely sharing some of their content that is amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, we will have somebody new to come and speak to us about voting and about, the elections, because it's gearing up, it's coming up. Thank you. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you like what you saw, you know where you can find me. Please share this live stream with other folks. And thank you so much for joining in. And we'll talk very soon. Bye-bye.